The cracked bell outside the Booker Hill Baptist Church hadn't rung in a decade. Rust claimed its bronze shell, and vines climbed the wooden post it hung from, as though nature itself had tried to cover its silence. But to those born and raised in Tullahoma, Mississippi, that bell meant something. It meant fire and baptism, celebration and mourning. It rang for births, for deaths, for marches. It had rung in '68 when Dr. King was taken, and again in '08 when Barack was elected. But now it stood silent. Until the day Elijah Knox came home. The summer sun blazed over the parched dirt road that led from the Greyhound stop to the hollow of shotgun houses that made up Booker Hill. A lanky man in a black overcoat despite the heat, Elijah walked with a steady limp and a cane that echoed on the cracked sidewalk like a ticking clock. Children watched from porches, whispering. Old Miss Ruby dropped her spoon into her gumbo and whispered a prayer. Because Elijah Knox had left Tullahoma in shackles. And now, 27 years later, he was back, carrying something heavy behind those dark, quiet eyes. He was 19 when they took him. Elijah had worked nights at the Sinclair gas station to help his mother keep the lights on. He'd planned to save enough for trade school, maybe plumbing or electrical work, something honest, something useful. Then one night, the station was robbed. The owner, Mr. Whitaker, an old white man known for calling black boys boy even in 1997, was found beaten near to death. They said it was Elijah. Said his fingerprints were on the cash drawer. Said his boot tread matched the print in the oil stain. They didn't care that Elijah was home with his sick mother. Didn't care that the neighborhood knew he was innocent. The trial lasted 2 days. The jury was 12 white faces. The sentence, life, with the possibility of parole after 30. But Elijah didn't give them 30. He gave them 27 and came home with a letter from the Innocence Project and a cold apology from the state. Pastor Williams was the first to greet him. The man hadn't aged much, still wore the same crisp suits and smiled with the same warm strength. Elijah, he said on the church steps, you got the same fire in your eyes. I left a boy, Pastor. I didn't have fire, just smoke. Pastor Williams reached out. Then maybe it's time to light something with it. That night, they held a community supper. People brought collard greens and cornbread, catfish, and peach cobbler. No one asked Elijah to speak. But when he finally rose from his seat, the room hushed. I ain't angry, he said. Anger burns fast and leaves you cold. What I got in me now is heat that stays. He paused, looked at the kids sitting cross-legged on the floor, wide-eyed. I came back to fix what broke. Not just in me, but in us. If y'all let me. A slow clap rose from the back. It was Miss Ruby. And then the whole church echoed with applause that rattled the rafters, and for the first time in years, the old bell rang again. Elijah started small. He cleaned up the park where the swings were rusted and the slide leaned like it had given up. He recruited young boys from the neighborhood, some of them the sons of his old friends, some of them angry and lost. They called themselves the Dust Crew not because they cleaned, but because they believed in kicking up the dust until the world paid attention. They painted murals on cracked buildings. They helped old folks with groceries. They organized a free breakfast program in the same building that used to be the courthouse. But not everyone welcomed Elijah back. Sheriff McNulty, the son of the man who arrested him, stopped by one afternoon while Elijah was repainting a fence. "You stirring trouble, Knox?" Elijah didn't look up. "No, sir. I'm laying bricks." "Same thing in a town like this." Elijah stood slowly, leaning on his cane. "Maybe it's time towns like this got stirred." 3 months after his return, Elijah opened the doors to an abandoned warehouse on River Street. It became the Reckoning Room, a gallery, a community center, and a stage. The first exhibit? A photography collection called Conviction, featuring framed portraits of every black man in Tullahoma who'd been wrongfully convicted in the last 50 years. Some of the frames were empty. Their stories had never been heard. He hosted open mics, poetry slams. He brought in speakers, lawyers, artists, activists. But the most powerful event came on a Sunday night when Elijah told his story. Not from a podium, from a rocking chair, like a grandfather passing on a family secret. He spoke of solitary confinement, of the man in the cell next to his who sang spirituals through the vents, of learning how to read case law in the prison library, of forgiveness, not for the system, but for himself, for surviving it. When he finished, no one clapped. They just stood. And one by one, the young men in the crowd came forward and placed something in his lap, handwritten notes, folded prayers, Polaroids of their own broken fathers. It wasn't worship. It was witnessing. Not long after, a journalist from The Atlantic came to write a feature. Then came PBS. Then a filmmaker from Brooklyn. But Elijah didn't care about press. He cared about permanence. He turned the lot across from the church into a memorial garden. At its center, a statue not of him, but of a young black boy holding a broken chain in one hand and a book in the other. Around the statue were plaques, stories of injustice, yes, but also stories of redemption. One plaque read, "You are not your sentence." Another, "When the dust settles, we rise." At the unveiling, Elijah said, "This statue ain't for the past. It's for the future. It says we were here. We were more than the worst thing that happened to us." Elijah never married, never had children of his own. But by the time he turned 60, he had dozens of godchildren, sons and daughters of the movement he helped birth. They called him Uncle Eli. He started a scholarship fund, a literacy program. He trained 3 young men from the Dust crew to become paralegals, then lawyers. And when he passed away quiet, in his sleep, on the first Sunday of spring, they rang the bell at Booker Hill Baptist Church 57 times. One for each year of his life. At his funeral, the mayor, a young black woman Elijah once coached in debate, read the final letter he'd written. It said, "Don't remember me as the boy they locked up. Remember me as the man who refused to stay buried. I was dust. But I learned dust can shine when the light hits it right. So shine, baby. Shine bright." If Elijah's story touched something in you, if you felt the weight of the chains and the warmth of the fire, don't let it stay a story. Let it become something more. Pass it on. Share it. Speak up for someone who's still behind the fence. Be the light. Because when the dust settles, the soul still stands. This is the Soul Script. Until next time.